climb every day. Come on, electric bill. You not gree pay.
Waiting concern you for there. I beg you, come over here.
Okay, oh. I don't talk my own. As I dab reach house. Yay! Fire! Fire! My brand new flat screen.
Hold up.
Waiting concern you for there. I beg you, come over here.
Government property, now my property. If you don't come down now, I go report.
Don't be only report. Now report card.
President Buhari cites dairy farming initiative championed by Denmark and Kaduna State as a viable solution to farmers-herders conflict in Nigeria.
National Assembly Joint Commission or Committee on INEC adopts over 143 billion naira as supplementary budget for 2019 general election.
As global managers of water meet at the World Water Week in Sweden, impact of the resource on the ecosystem and human development tops discussion.
And on Good Morning Nigeria this Tuesday, we shall discuss the whistleblowing policy, the journey so far.
And certainly, over a year ago now, Nigeria introduced an anti-corruption program that encourages voluntary disclosure of information about fraud, bribery, looted government funds, financial misconduct, or theft of government assets.
And this program, known as the Whistleblower Policy, is being facilitated by the Federal Ministry of Finance and implemented by anti-graft agencies in the country.
As at March this year, the Minister of Finance, Kemi Adeosun, disclosed that over 19 billion naira had been recovered through the policy. Later, Vice President Yemi Oshibajo said the figure had increased to 200 billion naira as at May this year, courtesy of the same whistleblower policy.
And Femi, you know, whistleblowers are individuals or groups who send tips to report acts of corruption, mostly financial, to the government. This information is received by a central or state vigilance commission who are not to disclose the identity of the informant unless absolutely necessary.
Kirian, reports indicate that as at August 2017, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, had received 5,000 tips from whistleblowers.
And indeed, some major recoveries uncovered after tips from whistleblowers include the Ikoyi Osborn Tower case, the huge find at the residence of a former group managing director of the NNPC, to mention but a few. Several
platforms drummed up support for the whistleblower policy, who appeared to lack protection, giving rise to campaigns like Corruption Anonymous and so many others.
And these efforts paid off as the Whistleblower Protection Bill later received legislative backing last year when it was passed into law, giving some protection to individuals or groups who made disclosures for public interest.
Now, how has this policy fared so far? What has been the fate of the whistleblowers in the country? What more needs to be done to further strengthen the policy? This is the focus on Good Morning Nigeria today. We are reaching you live from the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I am Femi Okeowu.
And I am Kieran Umayo, joining Femi to welcome you formally to this Tuesday's edition of the program, which is the second for the week. And as always, the complimentary segment of the program shall be brought to you, including newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and entertainment news. For now, Tessie Bissong is ready to give us the morning news. Hello, Tessie.
Hello, Kieran and Femi. Good morning, Nigeria. Here's the news. President Muhammadu Buhari has expressed optimism that if the dairy farming initiative being championed by Denmark and government of Kaduna State can be replicated across Nigeria, the farmers-herders conflict will be curbed effectively. This was while granting audience to the outgoing Danish ambassador to Nigeria, Mr. Torben Getterman, who paid him a farewell visit. And the Food and Agriculture Organization, in collaboration with the federal government, has taken a step in mitigating the effects of insurgents and conflicts on livestock husbandry and value chains for the Nigerian systems. The intervention is as the FAO trains livestock experts in Nigeria on livestock emergency guidelines and standards to ensure high standards in livestock-based emergency responses.
In the identification of the most appropriate livestock interventions in emergencies and providing standards, indicators, and guidance notes.
Simply put, participants will learn how to, one, provide immediate and urgently needed benefits.
And away from agriculture, the presidency says it is aware of an audio recording purported to be the voice of Leah Sharibu, the lone Dapchi schoolgirl still in Boko Haram captivity. The senior special assistant to the president on media and publicity, Garba Shehu, says in his Twitter handle that the Secret Service is analyzing the audio. Formal government reaction, he explains, will follow the outcome of the investigation. Malam Garba Shehu maintains that President Muhammadu Buhari will spare no effort to ensure that all the girls in Boko Haram captivity are freed. He emphasizing that in dealing with terrorists, nothing is too trivial. And to the National Assembly, Joint Committee on Independent National Electoral Commission has adopted 143.5 billion naira as supplementary budget for 2019 general election as submitted by President Muhammadu Buhari.
The Joint Committee has sat and has deliberated the position to adopt the 143 billion as presented by Mr. President.
And now to political matters. Chairmen of various political parties in Borno State have endorsed President Muhammadu Buhari as the 2019 general elections consensus candidate for the presidential race. This was when they called on former Governor of Borno State, Senator Ali Modu Sharif, at his residence in Maiduguri.
The support they gave to President Buhari, it has encouraged me because Buhari has done what he has to people of Borno State, what he has not done to any state in Nigeria. Therefore, we have no reason whatsoever not to give him votes that will support him for 2019.
And from Imo State, the All Progressives Congress has pledged its support to the re-election bid of President Muhammadu Buhari in the 2019 general elections. This was the consensus of the party's members at a stakeholders meeting in Owerri, Imo State.
occasion, every polling unit with a minimum of 50 to 60 membership. I want 100 or 50 or 60 or 100 membership. We can win our election without other parties.
Still talking politics, the All Progressives Congress has described a statement by the People's Democratic Party challenging the Muhammadu Buhari-led APC to a debate as laughable. A statement by the acting National Publicity Secretary of the APC, Yakini Nabena, said the call for a debate on good governance by the PDP is a reminder of its 16 years of wreck on Nigeria. He said one of the many reasons Nigerians unanimously voted out PDP in the 2015 general elections is impurity, institutionalized corruption, diversion of counterinsurgency funds to political cronies and political activities. Yakini Nabena said a party whose administration placed the economy on life support because of recklessness cannot be in position to debate on good governance. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says, in contrast to geographical restructuring, prudent management of national resources and providing for the people will help address Nigeria's development challenges. This was at a town hall meeting with Nigerians in Minnesota, the United States of America. A statement by the Senior Special Assistant to the Vice President on Media and Publicity, Laolu Akonde, indicates that Osinbajo also addressed issues on the economy, anti-corruption, health and agriculture. He explained that the Buhari-led administration has put in place an economic structure able to function properly despite previous challenges. On recovered funds, the Vice President said government is committed to a transparent use of the funds in providing infrastructure. Nigeria's ambassador to the U.S., Mr. Sylvanus Adiawere Nsofo, led other Nigerians within and outside the state of Minnesota to the meeting held in Minneapolis. Vice President Osinbajo is back in Nigeria. And that's the news for now. Do not go away, because Good Morning Nigeria will be back with Femi and Kieran after this break. Do have a great Tuesday.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem frontally through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped, we are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime, we bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Dettol team is visiting schools to teach children how to protect themselves from diseases. Do you know how we get illnesses like diarrhea, cough, and cold? No! They are spread through germs which are everywhere. You collect germs that cause diseases. You pick up germs from any surface, like when you don't wash your hands after going to the toilet, while playing. And then you can get sick because of germs. That's why you need to fight germs to stay healthy by washing your hands and taking your bath with Dettol soap to protect from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Wash, wash, wash your hands. What you have to do is bath yourself. Dettol soap every day. Wash, wash, wash your hands.
You in the air-conditioned office with the itchy throat. Strepsils. Girl in the spotlight with the raspy throat. Strepsils. You in the pollution. It's you. Dry throat. Strepsils. Hello in the downpour with the scratchy throat. Take Strepsils. Strepsils, with its soothing medicinal ingredients, will heal the harm done to your throat from external factors. Strepsils. Strepsils. Strepsils, for a dry, itchy, raspy, scratchy throat.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the daring and invincible Louis the Mosquito. Responsible for 200 malaria cases all on its own. Is there anything that can kill Louis? Morphine! Presenting Mortine's Power Guard. Its powerful formula kills malaria mosquitoes fast. So, get Mortine Power Guard.
Fake news which is shared for malicious purposes is a danger to our peace and security in Nigeria. Misinformation as fake news is a serious threat to our hard-earned democracy and promotes hatred and misunderstanding between our communities. We are all responsible for stopping the spread of fake news in its tracks. So, always check the source and credibility of any news item. Say no to fake news. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information.
Helen! Your kitchen gets 10 out of 10. Thank you. This also gets a 10. Should we see the toilet now? Sure. This gets just 1.
It is clean.
But not perfect 10.
Better than my detergent and bleach? Impossible.
Challenge? Try the new Apic 10X. Compared to bleach and detergent, Apic sticker formulation removes yellow stains times better, giving you a sparkling clean toilet.
Wow.
Now you also take that
Apic 10X challenge.
Also available in 200 ml pack.
Nigeria's GDP rose by 1.5% in the second quarter of 2018, driven by the non-oil sector. Plus, stakeholders strengthened synergy towards curtailing post-harvest losses in the West African sub-region. Details on Business News with Joy Uzo.
Welcome to Business News. Reactions have been trailing the latest release by the National Bureau of Statistics on Nigeria's gross domestic product, GDP, which stands at 1.50% in Q2 2018, compared to 1.95% recorded in Q1 2018 and 0.72% in the same period of 2017. An economic analyst who spoke with NTA Business News was impressed that for the first time since the exit from recession, growth was driven by the non-oil sector, which grew at 2.05%, representing the strongest growth in non-oil GDP since Q4 2015. However, not without reservations on some of the other figures highlighted by the NBS in the report.
It also follows that they should perform more. Unfortunately, agriculture also had a reduction in growth, about 1.3 compared to what you have in the previous year. So it's what we need. We need more of performance in non-oil sector, from agriculture to manufacturing to service and so on and so forth. And that's what we are usually used to of having growth dominated by the oil sector.
And to agriculture, food remains a basic need of man. Interestingly, Nigeria is blessed with all it takes to get good harvest: human resources, arable land, a massive water source. But unfortunately, much of it is lost to pre- and post-harvest challenges. Towards tackling this challenge to ensure food security, not just in Nigeria but Africa at large, stakeholders are constantly initiating ways to address the issue. Recently, Organization for Technology Advancement for Cold Chain in Africa, OTAQA,
a multi-sectorial group was unveiled in the country. The association is for companies, professionals, and organizations across different industries in Nigeria and ECOWAS countries with experience and expertise in developing cold chain solutions to initiate more efficient strategies towards reducing post-harvest losses and waste along the agricultural, food, and allied value chain, as well as pharmaceutical products requiring the cold chain.
So the interconnection it provides a better access to market, because you are able to maintain your produce in the quality that you desire. You are able to extend its availability over a period of time under the appropriate cold chain conditions. That on the long run, we have a direct impact on food security and nutrition.
We are going to encourage and bring in the pharmaceutical companies so that they can work hand in hand with the private sector drivers in this industry. One thing that Otakwa will be doing is to be keeping the standard permanent and secured for the country.
Still on business news, Nigerian stock market halts two-day gaining streak as the NSE All-Share Index dips by 0.32% to close at 35,311.36 basis points. Here is a graphic representation of the closing figures. On that note, we wrap business news. Thanks for joining me. I am Joy Uzo.
And thank you indeed, Joy, for that business report. Newspaper review is next on Good Morning Nigeria.
The polity is active and the newspapers are reflecting it. And we go straight to our first newspaper. We take Punch, and the banner story on the on the front page of the Punch is on the Vice President's visit to the United States. Oshibajo, Nigeria's problem, not a matter of restructuring. And the rider follows Knox, IBB, Obasanjo, Jonathan, others for wasting $982.8 billion on oil revenues.
Okay, now let's turn to Daily Sun before Femi gives us more headline stories on the Punch. I have Daily Sun now, and besides the nameplate, 2019 polls, that's the kicker. National Assembly slashes budget to 143 billion naira. The details is on page 6. And now the main headline, how trouble was averted in 2015 polls. It's credited to Abdul Salami with a rider which says his committee persuaded Jonathan to respect peace pact.
Now on the top side of the Punch are various other stories, but one that has taken the attention of Nigerians in the last few months, and which we also talked about on Good Morning Nigeria, is the Apapa gridlock. Haulage cost rises by 360%. There are other stories. INEC budget still trending. National Assembly Joint Committee adopts Buhari's 143 billion naira request. Then next to it is PDP, Turaki, Obi reject Buhari's stand on rule of law. And still on the top part of the Punch, stop attacking me, Autumn tells Akume.
All right, let's return to the Daily Sun for other stories trending on the front page. Just besides the photograph there, you have a U.S. newspaper quotes Trump as calling Buhari lifeless. We won't respond to his comments, says the presidency. Well, in video, Leah Sharibu cries out to Buhari and Fani Kayode to police, why I can't appear now. That's on page 4 of Daily Sun. And then below the photograph, we have PDP's presidential aspirant to pay 12 million naira for the purchase of the form for the presidential ticket. It's on page 38. Femi, this issue of paying up to 12 million naira, what do you make of that, considering the fact that, you know, there are many bigwigs in that party that are contesting for the presidential ticket?
It's a time to raise money for political parties, and selling of nomination forms is one sure way, one legitimate way of raising funds. However, the price, the amount is always an issue to question, particularly when we talk about election spending, financial spending for elections.
And there may be some of them who will not be able to, you know, be able to afford that amount, and that will make reduce the number of people who are contesting. Now let's look at this story on National Assembly slashing the budget of INEC for the 2019 election, 143 billion naira. But what do you make of that? You know, considering the fact that the original amount brought was 250 something billion.
No, they approved the president's request for 143 for INEC. The other the breakdowns have not been deliberated on, the ones for the security and other, but the request for INEC itself was not slashed. So it's exactly what the president requested.
All right. Now, let's move on to the next national daily. And I have the Nigerian pilot here. Let's look at the main headline here. Buhari tackles Trump, says he's fit, sprightly, and not lifeless. Declares Trump's hate speech can't distract him. Accuses him of penchant for derogatory remarks against world leaders. And just below the nameplate of the pilot, we have DSS analyzing Leah's audio recording, says the presidency. And on the right-hand side, we have Niger Delta militants threaten fresh hostilities over restructuring. That's on page 6.
The Leah story forms the banner for The Guardian. In video, adopted Leah Shaibu pleads for rescue. Secret Service is analyzing the voice, says the presidency. But please, you're going to allow me to return to the picture story on the Punch. It's a very scary road damage, and it's in Taraba State. So we just reflect on that, and it's the rainy period of the year, time for things like this to happen. If the roads are not properly done from the initial stage, you see that it's a danger, it's a death trap for anyone who travels on that kind of road for the very first time. And there are not enough signals to stop motorists from plunging into that ditch.
It's indeed dangerous. And I recall that just a few days ago, the FRSC also reported a similar situation along Lokoja Abuja expressway, of course, informing motorists to be wary of such dishes appearing in some expressways in Nigeria because of the heavy downpour. But if we may go back to the Nigerian pilot, there are stories on the foot of the front page of the newspaper from left to right. Akwa Ibom government falls Akpabio on 24 billion naira hotel project funding. It's on page 5. And a 2015 post, why Jonathan conceded defeat. General Abdusalami Abubakar. Full details can be found on page 13 of the Nigerian pilot. Now, legal fees. SAN aiding governors to disperse looted funds, says Magu. Magu, of course, is the acting chairman of EFCC. Now, Jones Abiri sues federal government over illegal detention, demands 200 million naira as damages. Page 6 has the details of that report. And no creation of polling units before 2019 elections credited to INEC. It's on page 10 of the pilot.
And there are other legal stories, too, on the front page of The Guardian. Come from the opening ceremony of the Nigerian Bar Association's annual general conference. And on the top left corner of The Guardian, His outrage trails Buhari's stance on rule of law. Lawyers, activists, others warn on dictatorship. Now, this is the fallout from the president's speech at the opening ceremony of the annual general conference, where he said lawyers and Nigerians should balance the rule of law and national security and pay a little more attention to national security. And it's like from this story, the Guardian's story and the one you have just read. Yes.
I think what the president is trying to make it clear, that there should be a distinction between a rule of law and security. Because invariably, if there are security problems, right, you may not wait for the law to take its course before you can react to a security issue. You being a lawyer, is there anywhere in which the president can say, okay, fine, the law, yes, but let's tackle this problem first of all, and we may return to the law? Is it possible?
The lawyers will not agree with that. They think that the rule of law is the ultimate salvation for any situation in the country, including security. They think that you must fall back on the rule of law, and that the rule of law lays down the process, the procedure for which you do that. But, of course, the president knows what he's talking about. He wears the shoes, particularly security shoes, and he knows how he pinches, and he would wish to deal with security issues immediately they arise.
Especially when it concerns dealing with the terrorists, which, of course, they are not into conventional war. It's some kind of war that you have to be very careful with and, of course, be ready to tackle. Now, it's time for us to go to the editorial for today. The editorial for today is taken from the Nigerian Tribune. It's also on the INEC 2019 budget, Sage on INEC 2019 budget. Now, let's read a line or two from it. In the past few weeks, the issue of the passage of the Independent National Electoral Commission's INEC 2019 election bill, budget rather, has become a source of conflict between the executive and the legislature. While INEC races against time, as if that was not bad enough, Issa Sage, a professor of law and chairman, Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption, has come up with a dangerous thesis which aims at usurping the power of the appropriation vested in the legislature, citing the doctrine of necessity. The doctrine of necessity, can it be applied, in this circumstance?
That's the beauty of law. Everyone reads the law and has his own interpretation to it. Eventually, the judiciary determines what you do. So everyone is entitled to his own opinion based on your perception of what the law says. But I don't know if it has come to the stage of applying the doctrine of necessity for an election we knew will come up 4 years ago. So it continues to enrich our polity to have people throw up issues and to have the media discuss these issues. And
for everyone to have better understanding of how things work. Well, that will be it for newspaper review for this morning. And as we continue with Good Morning Nigeria, let's take a short break. And when we return, we'll move into the nitty-gritty of our conversation this morning, which is on whistleblowing policy. Do stay with us.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, One nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Win a trip to Dubai in the 2018 Three Crowns Mom of the Year promo. Visit www.femininelounge.com/competition to find out more.
3 Crowns Milk. Healthy moms, happy families.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous, whether you do it for fun or for political gains. Real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
Madam. Brought us as usual.
As usual. You have no problem.
For the three put
You are welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah?
Welcome.
You take that one.
Yeah, take that one.
You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have? You don't have?
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice. Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. Mobo to come to chocolate rice of made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made.
Correct.
And how they are cook it.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
For years, the NTA has been promoting science, technology, arts and crafts under the tagged name National Children's Expo. We are set with another edition as we gather children around Nigeria. Junior category ages 6 to 12 and senior category ages 13 to 18. The theme for Expo 2018, achieving self-sufficiency in agriculture, meeting the challenges of security and exposition of alternative energy as pathways to national development. Date, October 21st to 25th, 2018. Venue, NTA Headquarters Arena, Area 11, Garki, Abuja. We are set to celebrate the best of innovation across the country. For more information, please call the following numbers. NTA
are caused by germs. They are everywhere. An average human being comes in contact with over 1 million germs daily in unclean water, dirty surfaces, in the toilets, on cuts and wounds, on your clothes. Germs can cause deadly diseases like typhoid, diarrhea, flu, and cough. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's One Capful for surface cleaning in your bathing water, in your laundry water, for first aid to protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol Sure, endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association.
Use Dettol Skin Jelly, which protects against germs for a healthy, smooth skin every day.
Yeah, welcome. To set the stage for our conversation on the whistleblowing policy, the journey so far, let's take this background from Abdulmalik Adio.
In a bid to curb corruption, mismanagement of public funds and financial malpractice, as well as encourage compliance with financial regulations, the Federal Ministry of Finance introduced the whistleblowing program. The deepening financial crisis confronting the nation made it necessary for the country to have such a policy. Launched on 21st of December 2016, the policy allows whistleblowers who report fraud or theft of public funds to be given not more than 5% of whatever sum is recovered as a result of their thief. In the first 2 months of the whistleblowing policy, it was reported that the Nigerian federal government recovered over $178 million. Later in March 2018, the Minister of Finance, Kemi Adeosun, revealed that 9.12 billion naira had been recovered from the Nigerians' whistleblowing policy since it came into effect, stressing that institutionalizing whistleblowing infrastructure will help keep government officials on their toes. The minister gave the breakdown of the recoveries as 7.8 billion naira, $368 million, and £27,800. She noted that the policy will be amended to accommodate instruments that will deal more with prevention, including using misery shoppers to garner information as it is done in the United Kingdom. Now, has the whistleblower policy been able to aid the federal government's anti-corruption crusade? What structures should be included in the policy to address the yearnings of Nigerians for an end to corruption? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will take a look at these issues on today's edition of the program.
All right, and now in the studio to discuss the topic is the Special Assistant to the President on Financial Crimes, Kehinde Ogini. Kehinde, we're glad to have you this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you. And also with us in the studio here is our friend Godwin Onyachalam. Godwin Onyachalam is the from the African Center for Media and Information Literacy. He's a senior program officer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And of course, we have another discussant that is going to be of that we're going to bring an immense contribution to this conversation, and he is the policy manager, One Campaign, and he is in the person of Edwin Ihoria. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
All right, Femi.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome, gentlemen. But let me start first with the Special Assistant to the President on Financial Crimes. Let's know the legal status of the whistleblowing policy. It's clearly stated by the federal government that it is a policy, but let's know where the legal status is for now.
Whistleblowing policy was initiated by the Federal Ministry of Finance. The Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, developed a memo and submitted to the Federal Executive Council sometimes in 2016. And FEC approved that policy, which eventually gave birth to whistleblowing policy we have at the moment. It is an executive policy, and as it is, we don't have legal framework. When I talk about legal framework, I'm talking about there is no statute backing the policy so far. Of course, we have whistleblowing protection bill pending at the National Assembly at the moment. But to the extent that the Federal Executive Council has the right to come up with policies of this nature where the need arises, of course, the policy is still what Nigerians or the government relies on in piloting the affair or in driving whistleblowing programs in Nigeria at the moment.
Let's now begin to look at how government that initiated this policy feels about the policy so far. Is government satisfied that that policy has been worth the while?
I can tell you that the policy is worth the while. You know, a journey of 100 million miles starts with a full step. We can't get to where we plan to get to in a day. Developed countries of the world, United States of America, the UK, they have evolved over the years. For instance, in the UK, we have PIDA, Public Interest Disclosure Act as far back as 2002. In the US, we have Sebney-Hosley Act. We have Dodd-Frank, Wall Street Reform Act in the US as far back for a very long time. So they didn't just get to where they are in a day. So it's a good development. The government should be commended for the courage, for the initiative, and for the boldness in coming up with a policy so as to jumpstart the fight against corruption at this moment, while we are waiting for the passage and eventual enactment of the whistleblowing protection. So in short, the policy is worldwide, as we can see recoveries that have been made. Of course, we are all privy to know the popular Ikoyi recovery, where millions of dollars, over 43 million US dollars, was recovered, among other currencies, nairas, pounds, and all of that. So it's worldwide. It's a very laudable thing, and it's good. And of course, there are other recovery that have been made. Of course, data statistics can be found at the Federal Ministry of Justice and relevant agencies of the government.
Okay, thank you very much. And what we understand now is that there's no legal framework yet, as the bill is still pending at the National Assembly. Now, right, now we will speak to that perhaps in the course of this conversation. But let's turn to Onyacholam. Actually, in a nation that has been bedeviled by looting of public funds for so many decades, many Nigerians welcomed the development, when whistleblowing policy was instituted. To you, how has it fared?
Yeah, the policy has fared very well. I mean, it's the most creative intervention in the fight against corruption so far. I mean, whether you want to talk of TSA, whether you want to talk of the multilateral agreements that are signed, whistleblowing policy stands out as a flagship of the anti-corruption struggle. And government has done very well in initiating it. I mean, it realizes that the fight against corruption cannot be fought by government alone. So by introducing the whistleblowing policy, government has sort of say, let us also bring in the citizens. This battle cannot be fought alone. Of all the three major policies the government campaigned on, the security, whether you want to talk of corruption and job creation, employment, improving the economy, fighting corruption certainly, without being told, is the most difficult. And government has initiated introduced the whistleblowing policy by ensuring that the citizens are also brought along in the fight. I mean, it's a welcome development. And like you mentioned, it's led to several recoveries. I mean, the 43 million naira that was discovered in Kaduna Airport was through whistleblowing. The $9.2 million that was discovered in the house of a former GMD of NNPC was through whistleblowing. So it's certainly a welcome development.
Let's talk about the incentives. The criminal justice system in Nigeria empowers every citizen to divulge information about any crime being committed, and it stops at that. But the whistleblower policy goes ahead to introduce incentives. There are people who think that that aspect of incentive makes it a little, the only controversial part of that policy.
I don't think it's controversial, because in a nation like this, when you are fighting endemically corrupt nation like this, I mean, you have to introduce some sort of incentives for people to be able to. But what one will advise the citizens is that they should not focus on, the reward. Okay. If you really want to fight corruption, don't focus on the reward. Just be patriotic enough and say, let's make disclosures to relevant institutions. I mean, once you begin to focus, we will lose track of, we will lose the essence of the policy if you begin to focus on just but the incentives are very, very important. It's very important that, people are encouraged to blow the whistle.
Okay, let's go to Edwin now. What's your take? You have listened to the two guests and what I have read so far on this conversation. So what's your take on that? Have we really fared well since the introduction of whistleblowing policy?
I would say yes. In short, yes, we are fed well, appreciably, because we've moved from where we were to where we're not there yet. We're not where we should be, but we've actually moved, and that is quite commendable. Let me quickly dwell on the issue of incentives. And I think it's quite key to understand that incentivizing disclosures, it's not odd. It's not. I think Mr. Kende here already acknowledged the Dodd-Frank Act, which also gave that, it has the same provisions, basically. It allows individuals, private citizens, to divulge, maybe by virtue of their position as, maybe because you are a banker and you're involved in some transactions, you can actually divulge when you think something is not going right, or people are trying to evade tax, those kind of, if you have those, you can do that, and then you get rewarded for that. So that is not, it's not strange in Nigeria to start with that. But more importantly, I'd like us to look at this fact. There is a survey that was done through the NBS, the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, with the EU and UNODC, and dealing with bribery as a major form of corruption. And in that report, you will understand that almost 90% of people who have been involved in corruption either have either given a bribe or a bribe has been solicited for, and who say they're not happy with it. The question was asked: have you reported that? Did you report? 90% said no, they have not. This is instructive. And when they were asked why, a lot of them said they were afraid of the consequence, that there's going to be retaliation on them. They were sure that, or some people even said nothing will happen. Do you see my point? Yeah. So there's a lot of, cynicism. People just don't believe that even if you report anything, nothing will happen. So the Criminal Justice Act provides for you to be able to report and all of that. That is true. But when you have a feeling that when you report, nothing will happen, or that when you report, you will be punished, right? And they get that is very instructive. That shows that you need to do something else to change the paradigm, to change the mindset. And one of those is the protection side of it, that when you report, you don't get punished, number one. There's no retaliatory effect on you. And then two, that something will really happen. And so the incentive part is quite important. But I think maybe in the course of the conversation, we'll talk about the issue of protection of people who make reports. And I think that is where we have a major challenge.
Let's take your submission. We'll take it a step further. Yes. But before I put that question to you, let's let our viewers know that we extended invitations to the EFCC, and we are still expecting them to come in for this program as the discussion goes on. But because the issue we're talking about, the step further I thought we should be talking, is that when there is corruption between two people, two organizations and all that, it is possible that the corruption is that the two parties want to compromise the system. Mm-hmm. That somebody does not report, is possible that he is also afraid of the consequences of his own evil deeds too, even though he feels cheated out. Okay. We would have wished to know from the experience of EFCC whether if they pick up the person who has been exposed, they also go back to those people who are involved in the chain of activities. But you have raised this issue. Let us talk to it. Disclosure has consequences, both for the person that has been exposed and the person that is being exposed. Yes. In this light, in the light of the issue I've just raised, how do you think it works?
I think the policy is not, it does not protect you if you are complicit. That we should get that clear. So if you report because you feel you have been cheated, but you were part of a corruption chain or corruption process, and then you go and report, your reporting does not exclude you. So prosecution will include you. That the policy does not exclude you from that. But what is instructive here is that when you have, and it is important, and I think this is where I have a challenge with the process, and I'd like to do that, the issue of transparency in this system. We need to know the cases that have been prosecuted. We had about 8,000 reports that have come into the unit. We have about 791 actual cases that have been investigated, and about 500 and something that have been completed. But we don't know them. But one of the things that is clear from the presentation from the Director of Special Duties in Ministry of Finance in the last evaluation workshop that we had, he submitted and he said that
it gave a breakdown of different tips that they've received. You would be shocked to see that most of the biggest numbers come from issues of diversion of, or maybe non-remittance of NHIS, or some say it is diversion of emoluments. So you see, when persons have been affected, when staff, money is meant for them, for their emoluments, you see, they easily get reported because when it affects them directly. We see that. And this is important. Now, the question we are trying to talk about the issue of when somebody reports a case, how is he protected? And we must also see that within the first 2 months of starting this policy, over 5,000 reports came in. But since then till now, it's about 8,000. It shows you that the initial enthusiasm is actually going down. So we need to also get to see that there are other things beyond just incentivizing or beyond punishment or beyond your complicit, whether you're complicit, that drives that report. It is more about how it affects the people that are involved. And this is where you see, what do you call that thing? Altruism is not really the true purpose. If it doesn't affect you many times, you just look away. And this is why we think that there needs to be a reform of that policy to include things that will make people begin to declare. For instance, if somebody has been prosecuted, it should be obvious. We should know who has been, who is complicit, who has been dealt with. We should see them. Then we don't vote for them again, or we don't, sorry, I'm activist, but I'm going to say, we don't want to vote for those who have been complicit. We don't want to keep them in the system, officers who have been dealt with, who have been caught in corruption, and they have been reported, and we should see them all. And so that we can point fingers at them, then it will be a deterrent to others. These are the things we think. Transparency, I think, is what is still, needs to improve in this regard.
All right. Now, to contextualize this, within the ambit of the law, it is very clear now that there's no law backing this policy at the moment. It's an executive order, so to speak, that's being carried out. And I want to get back to Ogini. Now, how does this impact on the person divulging information and, of course, the aspect of protecting that personality? Is there any law that could be, put into action, to ensure that the person divulging information is protected?
Thank you. Generally, with or without whistleblowing policy, citizens are entitled to security of their persons and property. Notwithstanding the fact that whistleblowing policy, that there is no extant law regulating whistleblowing in Nigeria, it doesn't take away the fact there are other laws in Nigeria guiding against likelihood of attack on persons who seek to report things that are considered infractions. So the laws are still there. There are laws, in our jurisprudence that protect citizens. For instance, even before they come into force of the policy, if you attack someone, if someone is going to a police station to report to you for whatever thing or whatever offense, that anything whatsoever, and you attack such a person or you prevent such a person to make a disclosure or to report you, there is a law protecting such an individual. Then going back to whistleblowing policy, like I said the other time, there is no statute at the moment. No law has been enacted at the moment protecting the citizen. But when you look at the policy, it deals with instances. It makes reference to situations whereby it recognizes the importance of protection. That nobody should take illegal action against someone seeking to make disclosure. Now, I understand that most citizens are a bit skeptical because they feel they are not well protected. But that is not the challenge with the act. With the policies. Because if our claim is that people are skeptical, people are worried, people are afraid, how come we have over 8,000 reports? These are Nigerians. These are Nigerians, they report without and all of that. And I can tell you, I'm not, I say with all sense of responsibility, I've not seen instances of so many instances where someone accused people of attacking him for divulging information. There may be pockets of few, one or two, but it is not so rampant, if you want to agree with me. So it means, therefore, it means that the problem is not basically about the protection. Like my colleague here said, our patriotism is not sufficient. We don't do things altruistically. The issue of incentive, I was part of the federal government delegation. We went on a whistleblowing tour in the UK sometime in March. We went there to conduct a study on how UK government handles their whistleblowing. Of course, they have the law. UK has Public Interest Disclosure Act, which is the law regulating whistleblowing. But it is more or less a private, an employee-employer thing. Unlike our own that is centered on the public officials. In the UK, within a system, for instance, NTA and other government agencies, they have institutionalized whistleblowing programs that requires an employee who feels dissatisfied or who observes infractions in the way things are done to report to the management of that particular company. I mean, of that particular organization, establishment. And there are provisions that prevents they prevent management at the top level from either sacking or disengaging or punishing such individual, such employee. So that is a remarkable difference between her own system, which of course is driven by policy.
And that's the reason why I raised this issue. I'm glad you have cited this example, you know, in UK, where a law has been enacted for it and is properly, is handling the situation properly. Now, you know, Edwin said something that has to do with the, reduction in enthusiasm among Nigerians with respect to the issue of whistleblowing. Well, many may feel that there's no law backing this, and their life is in danger if they divulge information that will lead to recovery of funds, especially when the person concerned has the wherewithal to come after the person reporting the theft.
Thank you. When you understand the psychology of Nigerians, you observe that on a subject matter, more than 15 people may be bringing a particular report. I'm not ruling out the possibility that most of the issues citizens are reporting about, they are similar. From my own personal experience, I've seen an instance where more than 10 people had come to the office of the Honorable Attorney General's office to report on similar issue. Someone coming, I've observed that there is a particular account somewhere where a particular sum of money was lodged and they are not remitting it and all of that. A week later, you see another person bringing the same account. I've seen an instance where more than 10 people, informants, coming to report on a subject, on a particular issue. So because most Nigerians, they talk, they relate, even friends, when they are discussing, I have this information, I want to disclose this tomorrow. You'll be surprised that before someone comes tomorrow, another person had come earlier to report the same issue. And I've been able to even intervene on one or two situations, on two cases where people will say, this information, who brought it? And I said, no, you are not, because I have a friend, I discussed with him at a point in time, and eventually I don't know whether he's the one that brought it and all of that. We have that particular instances. But what I'm saying in essence is that the enthusiasm, I don't think people are still interested. But this information, the information that people report about, is all about, is about access. And you will discover that a good number of people getting the information either got it from people who had been in government or people who are retired, or people who, one way or the other, are closely related to these people. Because if you are talking about an account, if you are not a banker, or you are not a signatory to such account, you are not likely to even have any information on those things. So it's not as if the enthusiasm is dropping, really, but there may be limits to access to such information, given the fact that a good 8,000 is a lot of figure, is a high figure. So chances are that a good number of information relating to most of these things have been taken care of. This is not to say, but there is a problem, a challenge we're having. We tend to focus on financial infractions that are of sensational dimension. There are some pockets of issues, 10,000 here, there, 20,000, they sent you to a particular place to carry on an official assignment, and you did not come back to return the remaining funds and all of that. Those are issues. But people seem not to be interested in reporting most of these things. They tend to go after big issues and all of that. Big cash and all of that. And you know that if you are able to deal with this little issue, you are sent to do something, or you overquoted for a particular project. If we begin to do with them and people take it seriously, I have reasons to believe that.
So whistleblowing does not stop just with the big ones, big caps.
No, big one. It's not. In fact, there is no cap in the policy.
Yeah.
The policy does not state a particular figure. It says any financial infractions.
All right. Let's deal with this alleged winning interest. Godwin, what do you think? Is it the media hype that has reduced? Is it the recovering institutions that have stopped reaching out to Nigerians? We saw the excitement. We saw and like he said, sensationalism that accompanied a number of these recoveries. They have stopped coming. Are they still on being recovered secretly, or the Nigerian person is no more divulging information?
I think the reality, even as confirmed by officials of implementing agencies, is that the volume of reports has completely reduced in relation with what they had when the policy was announced somewhere around December or towards January, February, March of 2017. Yeah. It's significantly reduced. There's no doubt about that. And the reason for that majorly is the lack of public enlightenment. You know, there is no sensitization of the citizens out there about what many people don't, even up to our higher institutions. We interacted with some university students who are law students who don't know about whistleblowing. So people don't know that there is a policy out there like that, a window out there like that through which people can make disclosures. You know, so that's one. And secondly, the reason there is lack of interest in it is also because people see some form of lack of effective protection for people who blow the whistle. It's out there. There is a case of NTA Thompson, Department of Technical Cooperation in Africa, Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He made disclosures in his department and he was sacked for 7 months. But for civil society organizations and the media that mounted intense pressure on the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, as well as the Office of the Head of Service of the Federation, the guy was only be able to be recalled after 7 months. And as we speak to you now, the backlog of his salaries for that 7 months has not been paid. And when he was recalled, there was also what we called punitive redeployment. He was somebody who was head of Servicom, was redeployed to the library. So the guy saw that, you know, these reprisals is not likely to be reduced when I remain here. So he sought for a transfer of service. So he's now in the Federal Ministry of National Budget and National Planning. That's where he is now. And there is also the case of Aaron Kase, Police Service Commission. You would have heard of the case. Yeah. Until Aaron Kase was suspended in 2015. I was not recalled until he went to court in November 2017. National Industrial Court gave him judgment. And as we speak, up till now, when he was recalled, when he was recalled in November, he was only called back in April 2018. As we speak, Aaron Kase has not received the backlog of his salary from 2015 up till now. There is the case of Murtala Ibrahim, Federal Mortgage Bank. There are so many of them there. Federal Mortgage Bank himself, he's an auditor. You know, they wanted him to cook also, but he said, no, I won't do this, you know. So he was sacked since May 8th. Murtala Ibrahim is out there now. So there are so many of them like that. We have to be intervening, you know, civil society, the media. So it's a considerable reason for people to say, no, what kind of thing is this? If I cannot get, yes, if I cannot get protection.
That's why I asked Ogini initially about the issue of law backing this. Because one, I think the story from Godwin, you know, is apt, you know, with respect to this conversation, because people could be victimized. For instance, if a whistleblower is victimized for his or her disclosure, where does he or she turn to? I'd like to begin with you.
Okay, so thank you so much. This conversation is quite interesting, and I would say that my assertion that the enthusiasm is reducing, it's just by the numbers, because the first 2 months over 5,000, and then in the next 14 months, or I mean, about that, we have just another 3,000. So it just tells you that judged by the intensity and then also look at the quality of report in terms of where the report's coming from. You see that most of the reports are coming, the ones that are actionable actually, are coming from the things that affect civil servants in the public service. How many private sector reports have happened? We have some 3 microfinance institution reports in that table. We have a few other ones like that. So again, I just wanted to bring that perspective so that we see that it is not just out of just saying that the interest is waning. But again, talking about the issue of protection, the law is not there yet. There are existing laws, like Mr. Kende alluded to, that protects you for administrative injustice. You go to Public Complaints Commission. There are things that exist, but we all know that the kind of justice you get and the time it takes, you would have suffered and died from getting justice before the justice comes. And that is why we've been asking to say, can there be a special anti-corruption court that when things emanating from whistleblowing shows up and it is protected, this man is protected because he knows that because he has done this he cannot be victimized. That doesn't exist right now. I'm more interested actually, not in the punitive side, it's on the transparency side. You know, we are campaigning for transparency. Nigeria is a member of the Open Government Partnership. Yeah. The question here is that, do Nigerians even know these 500 and something cases that have been decided because of whistleblowing? Do we know them? Do we know who are those that are involved? Again, I made reference to the initial survey that was done on corruption. Yeah. People said they don't report because nothing will happen. And you all know that. Why wouldn't you report a bribery when somebody solicits a bribe? They are not reporting because they think nothing will happen. So let citizens know that something is happening. And when they are sure about that, then they are more encouraged to come forward when they have information. And this is outside of the protection.
Must we always set up new outfits to deal with new problems? We all have agreed that there are existing institutions, legislations that we can always tap into. Why would someone who gets victimized in his place of work not go to Public Complaints Commission, for instance? Those people already exist. It's been there for close to 30 years. Of course, how effective they are is another thing. So can we talk to this issue of making what we already have functional? Let me come back to you, Edwin.
Yes, I agree totally with you. The only reason why this is coming up is in the issue of corruption as a specific, as a strategic objective of this administration. The reason why anybody is suggesting at all that we should think about special court is the issue of expedited execution of corruption cases. Okay. So that is on one end. But for the effectiveness of existing institutions, that is a totally different matter. And I'm not sure this topic here can deal with that, because we all know when people are dying, and it takes 5 years, 6 years to get justice. I don't know how you call that. So we have to think about how to deal with that so that people can be more proactive in dealing with such issues of administrative injustice or whatever you find. And again, like you also know, over the years, there has been this issue of, big man politics instead of institutions. So if an effective guy heads an institution today, then things begins to happen quickly. Then when he leaves, somebody else comes up, you know, things just goes back like that. We can't continue to have that, but that's what we've seen. So we should try to build our institutions in a way that no matter who is in charge, you know, the things get expedited, things get done the way they should be done. That's what we would advocate for. But most importantly, we keep hammering on the word transparency, transparency, transparency.
All right, Edwin, thank you so much. But we are not done yet with the issue of victimized whistleblowers. And I want to return to Ogene. We actually cherish the scenario you painted with respect to what is obtainable in the UK, where there is a law backing whistleblowing. For a whistleblower to go to a public complaints commission and get justice in 3 or 4 years, it does not help matters, if I understand what the government meant by introducing whistleblowing. Now, can we talk about special policy with special law to back it up? And to this extent, where does a whistleblower who is victimized turn to?
Thank you. There are so many options available to whistleblowers who claim to have been victimized or who have been victimized. I'm happy to hear from my colleague how someone who felt he had been victimized took the bull by the horn and proceeded to the National Industrial Court. And eventually, he got justice. I think the government of the day should be commended for that. If the government of
so he got justice, he didn't get his pay, he didn't get his
pay? I may not be able to comment on that, but it's a process. The fact that he was reinstated, he would definitely be paid. How, when the internal arrangement and processes, I may not be able to.
The same people victimizing him would make it impossible.
He will be paid. I'm driving at something. I'm driving at something. Yes. We know that we have a listening government. We have a listening president. He cited 3 instances, and out of the 3 instances, about 2 of them have been reinstated, which, of course, is a clear testimony that the judicial system works, and that the government, that it is not the decision of the government. You know, there could be a small circle of people within a particular system victimizing such a person, but it is not a policy of the government, as it were. It buttresses the fact that the government had no hand in the victimization. That is why it is still the institution of government that reinstated him, the National Industrial Court. Now, if you cited 3 instances and 2 people were reinstated, and I'm sure his salaries and entitlement will be paid within a short period of time. Now, Public Complaints Commission is there to receive petitions from aggrieved citizens. But the challenge I have with Nigerians, we don't utilize most of these options most of the time. With due respect to Nigerians, sometimes we want to be seen to be suffering rather than take our fate to our own hand and use existing institutions to articulate and fight for what we rightly believe in. There is conventional courts. There is public complaints.
Now we must go back to the insistence of Kerian. Yes. What stops us from building into this whistleblower policy a specific legal protection? And what is holding back this legislation? Going to 2 years now that it has been initiated and it's been practiced one way or the other. What is holding back the legislation?
Thank you. I'm sure you know, I'm not a member of the National Assembly, and of course I can't speak for them, but I know that they are working on it. I want to believe they are working on it. You know, I can't speak for them, but I know they are working on it. We are happy after relatively some time. We were happy about 3 weeks ago or less than a month ago, NFIU bill was passed. One day we'll wake up that procedure of crime bill will be passed. And I believe that whistleblowing protection will be passed one day. But I don't want to speak for the National Assembly.
All right.
They are doing their job. We should allow them to do their job. It is in the interest of the National Assembly members, the Nigerians, the executive, the judiciary, and the world at large for such a bill to be passed.
Okay.
So, and I believe that it will be passed.
All right. Thank you very much indeed. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA, and our topic remains the whistleblowing policy of the federal government. How far, so far? We still have our guests here in the studio. You've just listened to Kehinde Ogene, and of course we still have Godin Onyacholam of the African Center for Media and Information, and our friend here, Edwin Ikoria, Policy Manager, Transparency and Accountability One Campaign. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, we'll go to other aspects of our conversation this morning.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Hear the call of change. Stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. Go to so let the change begin from within. Look at you, Ogerola. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me.
You're welcome back with us. We still remain on this topic. We're trying to evaluate the journey so far on the whistleblower policy, a policy that excited Nigerians, but from discussions so far, which we're trying to see if that excitement can continue and the effectiveness of the policy so far. Our guests are still with us. We just want to say that the EFCC is one of the organizations that we particularly wanted in this studio, but for reasons beyond our control, we don't have them, but we extended our open studios to them. We have our tweets already coming in, and let's start. We'll take it with Kirian Lasisi tweets that, where is federal government keeping the recovered looted money?
All right, and from Omakoji, in advanced democracies, whistleblowing policy is used to recover looted money and better the economy. But it's so sad that some people took advantage of this policy to embark on defamation of character against their political opponents. This is a sad development.
Another tweet says, whistleblowing policy is a universal tool for fighting corruption. With the recovery of huge amounts of monies so far, it shows the policy is working. The policy needs to be institutionalized by creating the legal framework for its sustainability. And the National Assembly should expedite action on the bill.
Well, that tweet actually came from Ohio Sumoa Victor. And from Obweniza, he said, the reward system too seems cumbersome. It's like it takes forever for blowers to be rewarded after giving useful information. It is understandable that government must do her due diligence, but like it's often said, under maxims of equity, delay defeats equity. Blowers are exposed.
Ogbeniza still comments, there were reports of potential threats and or attacks on blowers. The government not providing adequate security may have hampered its speedy progress. If whistleblowers can be protected by the state, it sure will yield the much-needed results.
And finally, from Abueniza, the momentum that was concomitant with the policy seems to have died down considerably. What caused such dramatic twist remains a mystery. However, one is tempted to think that the trend was actually going towards cheap blackmail by some persons against their adversaries. Well, these are Nigerians contributing to our conversation this morning. Well, we encourage you to do so, so that we can, of course, feel your pulse with respect to the topic for this morning, which is a whistleblowing policy. Gentlemen, we have all seen from this conversation that there are loopholes in this policy that need to be addressed. And I want to begin with Godwin in terms of addressing these loopholes. One is that those victimized, well, when they use the already established institution, they don't get justice in good time and not in full anyway, because from what you have told us earlier on, those who got victimized in government-owned establishments are yet to get all they should get after they were reinstated. Now, to you, how can these loopholes be plugged?
Well, the place to start really is for government to demonstrate the political will. First, that political will to hold wrongdoers accountable. People upon which the whistle had been blown, against whom the whistle had been blown, had to be dealt with precisely to show that, I mean, this thing is wrong in the society. That's one. Then secondly, if, like Ntia Thompson out there and Aaron Kase out there are still, you know, struggling to get whatever is due to them in a society such as that, if government doesn't demonstrate the will to show that such people have to be protected, there is no way whistleblowing can survive. It's whistleblowing, the major tripod, the major plank is rest on is protection. Without protection, people will not blow the whistle. Once they discover that, you know, they are not being protected. And the place to really kick it off is to ensure that there is a law that ensures protection, effective protection for whistleblowers. There are two bills in the National Assembly now. Well, I mean, sorry, the Senate has already passed one, and that one is not even it at all, because it sought to criminalize even whistleblowers. It says that, yes, because it says that if you are a whistleblower, you are found to have wrongfully. Yes. So at what stage am I liable to have blown the whistle wrongfully? When I make a disclosure to government, and then government delays, and then, you know, enacting, and then the man goes there and relocates the loot, yeah, and then you say I gave you a false information. So that's in that Senate bill, and which is very wrong. So when you criminalize whistleblowing, those who say should make reports, you know, then you are not heading anywhere. Under the law, citizens have a duty to make reports. So Section 24B and E says it. Citizens have a duty to make reports. You know, yes, say something. You know, the government itself has a duty to, on Section 15.5 says it, government itself has a duty to clean up corruption and then abolish all forms of, I mean, abuse of power, you know. So it's even the press, Section 24. You know, I mean, Section 22. The press, radio, television has a duty to hold government accountable. All of us are supposed to be whistleblowers in this society. But what you find is that once you can't get that protection, there is no way the whistleblower policy will survive. And what government should do in this case is to ensure a speedy passage get the civil society input into what should be considered a concrete whistleblower policy, which will ensure that people are firmly protected when they blow the whistle. Otherwise, we will head nowhere. It's still the major plank, like I said, is the major fulcrum for whistleblowing is still protection.
Government action after the whistle has been blown, or action of prosecuting agencies. You have shown particular interest and concern about that. But then another starting point for protection or for the effectiveness of this possibly could be government, for now, focusing on ministries, agencies, and parastatals, setting up desks, whistleblowing desks, as we had Savicom in some time ago in every ministry and parastatal. Can that work if we have?
Yes, I totally agree that it will work if there's a whistleblower desk. And then, of course, there's a possibility of anonymizing those who are submitting information, credible information. So there's the possibility of that. But again, I think there is also, there are different dimensions to this. If you have a whistleblower desk and everybody knows you as the person who is in charge of whistleblowing, right? You cannot even have friends.
Perhaps you are just the collecting agency.
You are collecting. Yeah. So anybody you associate with, people begin to, if you're talking to somebody during break or something, somebody gets into your office, yes, people just begin to suspect. So this is for me, I'm talking about the practicality of making that work. Okay. It could work to have a whistleblowing desk, but anytime anybody goes into that office, even if it's just to go and say hi, people begin to look, aha. Yeah, what is this man doing there? Yes. So this for me is so that is where I'm worried about that. Okay. It's possible, but it may not be. But you see, the online and the SMS and the other channels that have been established are great. They are actually really, really powerful tools if the citizens can actually use them. Now, there is another part that I want to just refer quickly to that my brother talked about in terms of when people report. The law, the policy says that for you to get a benefit from that, it has to be information that is not already available to the government. It has to be information that is not publicly available that the government can have access to. You know, so that already makes many of the reports, makes many people not qualified, because even when we go to report and you say, the government say, we already have that information. Yeah. So we need to also have what we call like a clearinghouse. Let us know what you are investigating at the moment. Assuming we can go in and see that the government is investigating these cases right now, then I don't need to go and repeat like what my brother said. He said 10 people reporting the same case. If I go online and I can see that this is being investigated, then I know it's already done, right? But if I go and I think that action was taken on the basis of my report and I feel that I'm not getting the benefit of it, that becomes another problem. Finally, I want to talk about the issue of getting agencies to work on specific cases. In this last evaluation seminar that we attended, we got information that some of these cases that have been investigated are what we call classified. You know, classified, they are classified because they include or they refer to politically exposed persons. I'm worried as a citizen that the reason why it is classified, not for matter of national security, they are classified because the people involved are politically exposed. I don't know what kind of policy that is. And for me, that also makes me think that some people are very powerful.
Could it be that they are classified because they don't want a leak to the persons being investigated?
So that is the claim. Yeah. That is true. That is the claim. But my biggest worry is that if it is never concluded, it is never done with, we never finish the case so that we exactly know what the situation was and this man is either free of that charge or guilty. So this, for me, that finishing, that completeness is what the citizen is really looking for. But the man is still the president or still, the governor or the minister or he's still there. And I've just given a case and it is classified and I don't know how it is going. And the man is still there and the administration is going to, and the thing is going to end and I'm still in that establishment. So for me, those are things that citizens are worried about. That we need to see, we need to modify to understand how you are trying to crowdsource intelligence. This is what whistleblower is about. We call it crowdsourcing. You're crowdsourcing intelligence, and that is the best way to fight corruption. That is the truth. Transparency and crowdsourcing information. But if you're doing that, and then we are not so sure of what you are doing with the information we are giving to you, right? Unless it is a media, the one in the media, and it is $145 million, except those kind of things.
There are allegations that such information are sold to the people who are being informed.
Exactly. It's possible. So we need that transparency in that process that enables us to know whether you are politically exposed or you are in the process. We at least have clarity. We know the time it started. We know when it finished. And the results are known. That can give us rest of mind, and it can encourage more people to begin to provide such, disclosures.
Well, gentlemen, let's not shy away from the fact that when this policy came to be, that most Nigerians believe that it is targeted at politicians. And if some of us are believing that these same politicians will expedite action in ensuring that the law is in place, well, that's a matter for another day. But I'd like to return to you, Kehinde Ogene. You are the special assistant to the president on financial crimes. Now, all we have talked about here revolves around the issue of having a law to back this policy for it to be more efficient and effective. Now, do you allude to one of the postulations of Edwin that there may be need for whistleblower desks in government agencies and parastatals to further institutionalize the policy, at least to internalize it in the system of Nigerian citizens?
Thank you. The institutionalizing whistleblowing, to me, is not a function of setting up desk. Institutionalizing policy begins from having legal framework, which is about the law. It's not the desk. Desk has nothing to do with institutionalizing. Institutionalizing policy, things is legal issue, is a regulatory issue. So, and it begins with passing, enacting whistleblowing law. With due respect to my colleague, I feel that creating a desk might be needless in view of existing platform that currently exist in government agencies. For instance, we have SAFICO, we have ACTU, Anti-Corruption and Transparency Unit in ministries, agencies. Of course, we had discussion at a high level why those ACTU should just be converted to a desk that would be handling whistleblowing without necessarily having to create a whistleblowing desk, because whistleblowing is an offshoot of corruption. Of course, it targets corruption. It is an idea. It is an initiative to combat corruption. And if there is in existence a unit within ministries, agencies, and parastatals called Anti-Corruption Unit, I think we would just need to integrate that and continue with that. And that is exactly what the government is looking at, rather than create a whistleblowing unit strictly for that purpose. And of course, I know that it may not, the reason why there's a reform in law, crimes are always ahead of the law. And that is the reason why there will always be reform in laws. Even the PIDA, we have the Horsley and all these laws. From time to time, they review them. We don't have, of course, we have policy, we don't have law yet. I'm not averse to revisiting the policy to probably make it more robust, if need be, pending the passage of whistleblowing protection bill. Of course, law doesn't take care of everything. When society involves, by the time you get into things and you begin to look at it, it's a stakeholder thing. People bring suggestions on how things need to be done, civil society, the private sector, the government, people here and there, the international community, and you'll be able to say, oh, this is the best way to do, and you'll be able to talk about amendments, about bringing further input into the law. I quite agree with that. On the issue that has been raised, I did say before now that there is a remarkable difference between our whistleblowing program and the UK. In our home system, our policy seems to be concerned about corruption in public service. Why UK whistleblowing program centers primarily on corruption or corrupt practices within a particular organization. If I'm to canvass for an improvement in the policy, I will be suggesting that our policy should take care of both private and the public in such a way that it will be made mandatory that all private institutional organizations, agencies should inculcate, should have that system. Of course, like financial institutions, CBN has rule of corporate governance and whistleblowing guidelines as far back as 2014. That can be replicated in all other sectors of the economy, whereby it is mandatory for people to whistleblow, because most of these corrupt practices begins from the, of course, there can never be corruption in the real sense of it without an involvement of the private sector. When you steal public funds, you keep it in banks, you invest in real estate, you invest in insurance. So it cuts across. It should be made more universal. It should be made to have a universal application. Of course, our own policy still seems to be more robust than that of the UK, notwithstanding the fact that they have law, because theirs is all about employee-employer alone. Maybe that may be as a result of the fact, maybe they might have forgotten that corruption could still exist in a country like the UK, but it's more or less an employee reporting an employer or reporting within the systems. But if you can take care of the private sector and the law is passed today, enacted, of course, is a good thing. Then my colleague did say about politics. Look, I want to fight corruption, and the starting point for me is to have a policy called whistleblowing. That government should be commended because it must have ruled out the possibility that they must have concluded that they want to live above the board. So it is a political will that brought about the policy in the first instance. So the policy is not challenged. It doesn't have any issue as far as policy. Of course, there are pockets of challenges in terms of enactment of the law, in terms of making it to cut across public and private and corruption in private sector, and the need. My colleagues talk about transparency. In any system, developing countries, transparency can never be enough. It's an ongoing thing. It can be improved upon. Then strengthening institutions. It did say quite rightly that rather than our institutions, the strength of our institution to be determined about the person occupying it, the institution, whoever occupies it, at any point in time, must be seen to be doing what will advance the cause and the interest of Nigerian people. So I quite agree with him that institutions should be made stronger than individuals. Of course, it's not as if our institutions are weak, but most times when we discuss issues of this nature, people tend to believe that our institutions are completely weak. No, it's not as if they are completely weak. They are trying their best, given what the fantastic job the Office of the Honorable Attorney General is doing, EFCC, ICPC, and all the other police and other relevant Ministry of Finance, and other agencies of government. But I can say that we are not where we should be, but we are making appreciable progress.
Before we let you go on this, you have rightly said that the political will has been established originally from the inception of this policy. Yes. That has been established. But we are talking about efficiency. We are talking about effectiveness. We are talking about carrying Nigerians along if the policy will succeed, because it's people-oriented policy. Now, the issue of incentive, talk a little bit more about it. This incentive as part of it, is it working?
Now, let me add to that, because you were the one that raised that issue, and thank God you have a first-hand knowledge of it. Duplication of information. Yeah. And how does it play out in the disbursement of the incentives? Because it played out actually in the Ikoyi Tower recovery, when somebody stepped forward and said, I was the one that divulged, and the Ministry of Finance, it took some time, and it almost messed up the beauty of that disclosure.
Let me start by responding to the first question. In the Office of the Honorable Attorney General, where is my place of primary assignment, we have a very robust system, just like every other agencies of government have too. When someone walks in or brings a letter or brings a correspondence reporting a particular incident of corrupt practices, the first thing we do, because we know that for you to come out to say you want to make disclosure, I take it to mean that you are patriotic. I take it to mean that you are sincere. What we do, as far as Ministry of Justice is concerned, is to ensure that we legalize the relationship. And that is why the Honorable Attorney General, in his wisdom, came up with whistleblowing reward agreement. They enter into an agreement between the whistleblower and the federal government, executed by the federal government on behalf of the government and the whistleblower. Then, because the Ministry of Justice does not investigate, really, we sometimes ask or inquire from the prospective whistleblower which agencies of government he feels can investigate, or sometimes we say, okay, we'll refer to the EFCC, and we even notify at the bottom of the letter, we'll copy the prospective whistleblower. We send in a letter to EFCC, we have had cause to send to EFCC, to ICPC, to DSS, then they will follow up at that level. So the issue of whether two people, I'm coming to your question now, are laying claim to a reward hardly arise. You know, of course, there is this issue of Ikoyi where people were making claims and all of that. Yeah. I may not have the details because, of course, it is the EFCC that recovered it. Yeah. And, of course, the EFCC, it took time. People said it is taking time. Is it not better for the payment of the reward to take time than for the government to make a mistake or pay the wrong person? So, in my whole opinion, I think the EFCC and the Ministry of Finance, and by extension the federal government, did the right thing by profiling every document before arriving at a decision as to who to pay. Okay. It's better in that regard. It could have been a very serious thing if government had probably paid the wrong person.
All right, Mr. Gide, we'll stop you there and ask Godwin to let us know his final thoughts in just 30 seconds, please.
Okay, maybe my final thought would be to respond to my colleague here, the government official. You know, I don't want you to leave the impression, I want to leave here with the impression that I mean that government does not